she wondered. What could be more devastating than uncovering long-buried secrets? In a small town forgotten by time, Elisa returned after 30 years of absence, carrying the scars of a life filled with unanswered questions. As she crossed the threshold of her childhood home, a mix of nostalgia and pain enveloped her. But what awaited her inside would change everything. She thought she knew about her family. A hidden diary covered in the dust of the past revealed devastating secrets about her mother, a woman whose choices shaped not only Elisa's life, but also the entire community in which they grew up. The town, marked by silence and the shadow of unspoken memories, felt like a labyrinth of emotions for Elisa. Every corner resonated with the laughter and tears of the past. As she tried to piece together her family history, Elisa often found herself lost in her own reflections. The pain of her mother's absence, who had left in search of something that was never found, followed her like a constant shadow. The weight of guilt and the need to understand what had happened led her to question her own identity. Amid this search, Elisa had a supernatural encounter that would change her life forever. In a moment of despair, she found herself before a vision of Jesus, who welcomed her with compassion. His words resonated in her heart, offering comfort and hope. Through this encounter, Elisa began an intense spiritual journey, filled with visions and memories that challenged her to confront her pain. The deep conversations she had with the divine figure guided her to a broader truth about the power of forgiveness and redemption. As the hidden secrets about her mother emerged, the town also trembled under the weight of revelations. The foundations of the community, which seemed solid, began to crack as Elisa unraveled the story that had been carefully hidden. She found herself at a crossroads, to continue running from her pain or to embrace the call to transform her suffering into hope for those around her. The decision would not be easy, but the need to find purpose was stronger than the fear. Elisa's story is a gripping drama that explores the intersection of secrets, faith, and the search for a divine purpose. Throughout her journey, she discovers that the truth can be painful, but it is also the path to healing. What will she do with the revelations that await her? The secret that changed everything awaits her answer, challenging everyone to confront their own ghosts and seek the grace that can arise from the ashes of the past. Elisa entered the house with a racing heart, each step echoing in her mind like a reminder of the past she tried to forget. The walls, covered in faded wallpaper, seemed to whisper long-buried secrets, and the atmosphere carried the weight of unspoken memories. As she explored the rooms, she felt that every object there, every piece of furniture and every photograph carried the essence of her mother, a presence that had been both comforting and painful. In the living room, a portrait of her mother smiling in her youth stared back at her. Elisa approached, her eyes filling with tears. "Who were you really?" she thought, a question that had haunted her since her mother disappeared. The diary, now resting in her bag, seemed to pulse, as if calling to her. It was the key to understanding not only her mother but also herself. As she tried to process this torrent of emotions, the doorbell rang. It was Anna, her childhood friend who had stayed in the town. When she opened the door, Elisa was met with a familiar face, but the lines of worry etched on Anna's face surprised her.
"Elisa, you've returned! I didn't know if you'd have the courage to come back after everything that happened," Anna said, her tone a mix of joy and caution. "I needed to understand," Elisa replied, a lump in her throat. The reunion was sweet, but the tension between them was palpable. Anna had always been the more optimistic one, the one who believed that the past could be left behind, while Elisa felt trapped in a cycle of pain and guilt.
Anna tried to bring up light topics, but Elisa noticed the hesitation in her voice, as if every word carried a deeper meaning. "You know people are talking about you, right?" Anna asked, hesitant. "The diary, the stories, a lot of people are curious about what you will do now." Anna's words were a reminder of the weight Elisa carried, not only as a daughter, but as someone who could now unearth truths that would affect the entire town. Elisa felt the pressure increase. What if I don't know what to do with all this? What if the secrets are worse than I imagine? She remembered the conversations with Jesus, the hope those visions offered her, but doubt still consumed her. The idea of failing in her quest for answers left her paralyzed. Anna, sensing Elisa's internal conflict, tried to encourage her. "You don't have to do this alone. We can face whatever comes together. Remember that your story is also ours. I'm here to help." Yet, even with Anna's support, Elisa felt an immense weight on her shoulders, as if everyone's expectations rested in her hands. The following days were a whirlwind of emotions. Elisa spent hours reading the diary, each page revealing secrets that shook her. She discovered that her mother had been involved in a forbidden romance that had caused a scandal in the community. The words were like knives cutting through the illusions she had built around her maternal figure. How could she forgive her for tarnishing the family name? And what if this affected her too? Meetings with Anna became more frequent, but the conversations also revealed the tension between the two. Anna defended the idea that the truth could set them free, while Elisa felt increasingly trapped in a web of uncertainties. One day, at a local cafe, the discussion reached a critical point. Anna said, with her eyes burning with frustration, that Elisa needed to understand that facing the past was the only way to move forward. But Elisa retorted, feeling anger and sadness mixing within her, that what if she couldn't? What if it destroyed her? She argued that she wasn't like Anna and couldn't just leave things behind. The silence that followed was heavy, and both distanced themselves, each immersed in their own thoughts. Elisa found herself alone, reflecting on her limitations and fears. What was more terrifying, discovering the truth about her mother, or facing the possibility that her own life story could be a repetition of the mistakes she feared the most? Doubts surrounded her, and the pressure to start over felt overwhelming. She wondered if she would be able to turn her suffering into something positive, or if the path ahead would lead her to a bottomless abyss. Conversations with Jesus, although comforting, were gradually overshadowed by confusion and pain. In a moment of despair, she questioned why she was left like this and what was wanted from her, feeling abandoned. The quest for truth now seemed more of a burden than a liberation. In those moments of introspection, Elisa realized that she needed to confront not only her mother's secrets, but also her own weaknesses. It was time to confront not just the past, but also the uncertain future that awaited her. The diary became a symbol of her struggle, and the city, which once seemed welcoming, now loomed like an emotional battlefield. She knew the journey would be long and difficult, with obstacles that would test her courage and determination. But deep down, a small spark of hope still burned within her, whispering that perhaps the truth, as painful as it might be, could be the first step toward healing. The fight was just beginning, and Elisa was about to discover that even the most devastating secrets could turn into life lessons. Elisa sat at the cafe table, her nervous fingers tapping on the glass. The aroma of fresh coffee and the murmurs of customers around her were an attempt at distraction, but her mind was far away. The confrontation with Anna still troubled her. The exchanged words echoed, each seeming heavier than the last. Anna's phrase about needing to face the past to move forward resonated, but Elisa couldn't find the way to that supposed freedom. She looked at the cup in front of her, steam rising in spirals. What if she couldn't do it? The diary was in her bag, a constant shadow reminding her of the weight she was about to carry. The pages she had read contained secrets that could change everything, but the idea of exposing it all to the world, of reopening wounds that had already healed, paralyzed her. Anna appeared at the cafe door, hesitant. Elisa felt a mix of relief and anxiety. She didn't know if she was ready to face her friend again, but she knew the connection they had was still significant. Anna approached with a cautious look. She apologized for what she had said, explaining that she was just worried about Elisa. Sitting down at the table, Elisa forced a smile, but the tension in the air was palpable. She admitted that she also worried about it, unsure if she was ready to confront everything. Each time she read the diary, she felt herself sinking deeper. Anna watched her, concern in her eyes transforming into empathy. Sometimes, Anna said, you have to hit rock bottom to find the light again, but you're not alone. I'm here. Elisa nodded in gratitude, but the doubt continued to eat away at her. The idea of failing, of not being able to handle the truth, left her restless. What if facing her mother's secrets meant losing herself in the process? In the days that followed, Elisa withdrew into herself. Each time she tried to open the diary, a wave of fear paralyzed her. The pages were filled with stories of love and pain. The revelation that her mother had been involved in a forbidden romance shocked her, but it also made her question who she really was. The pain of betrayal made her feel that, in a way, her mother had left her behind, even in life. One night, while walking through the city, Elisa came across a group of people in front of the local bar. The laughter and the sound of music were tempting, but she hesitated. The fear of being judged, of being the center of gossip, kept her from joining them. As she turned away, she heard a familiar voice. It was Marcos, a childhood friend she hadn't seen in years. He greeted her with a friendly smile, but quickly noticed the tension on her face. He asked her what was going on, his voice soft and genuine. She hesitated, but eventually shared a bit about her return and the diary. Marcos's expression changed, and he encouraged her to be brave. "Don't let the past define you. You are so much more than that," he told her, determination shining in his eyes. But what shook her the most was the mention that the whole town was talking about her return and her mother's secrets. The weight of expectation began to feel like an unbearable burden. The pressure to uncover the truth and tell her own story seemed to be crushing her. How could she be strong when everyone expected her to be, she thought, feeling more lost than ever. That night, Elisa couldn't sleep. The hours dragged on, and she found herself caught in a cycle of repetitive thoughts. Part of her wanted to move forward, but the other part kept her trapped, unsure about the journey she was about to undertake. What would happen if the truths she uncovered were more than she could bear? The next day brought a new wave of emotions. Anna was waiting for her at the front door, with an expression that made it clear something had changed. "Elisa, we need to talk. I've heard more about the diary, and..." "Some things don't add up," Anna said, her voice heavy with concern. Elisa's heart raced. What more could be revealed? They sat on a park bench, and Anna shared what she had heard, rumors about Elisa's mother's romance and a possible connection to an important figure in the city. "People are saying that maybe your mother got involved with someone who could have changed everything. This would change your image and your family's image," Anna said. while Elisa listened, paralyzed. The revelation hit her like a punch in the stomach. Why didn't anyone tell me this before? How could I have been so naive, she thought, despair taking over her. The idea that her mother could have caused an even bigger scandal left her in shock. Now the weight of the past was heavier than ever. The thought of facing the truth seemed impossible. Elisa felt like she was on an emotional roller coaster. With each new revelation, each new doubt, she questioned her beliefs. The internal struggle between the desire to know and the fear of discovering the truth left her exhausted. But at the same time, a part of her knew she had to face it, not just for herself, but also for her mother's memory. The friendship with Anna began to undergo a test. The conversations became more intense, more charged with emotion. Anna tried to be the voice of reason, while Elisa struggled with her own pain and confusion.
"I just want you to find peace," Anna said. But Elisa felt more and more lost, as if peace were a distant and unattainable concept. That night, under the soft light of the moon, Elisa sat in her room, the diary open in front of her. The pages seemed to shimmer in the dim light, as if each word was waiting for her, challenging her to read, to understand. The pain and confusion were immense, but she knew she had to face it.
And with a deep sigh, she decided that no matter what she found, she could not let herself be defined by the past. The journey was just beginning, and although doubts consumed her, the hopeful flame inside her began to rekindle. Elisa sat in her room, the diary open in front of her, and the words seemed to dance on the pages, as if each letter was calling her to an inevitable confrontation. The smell of the coffee she had brewed lingered in the air, but it no longer had the same comforting effect. What once felt like a ritual of tranquility had now turned into a constant reminder of her internal struggle. She took a deep breath, trying to push away the anxiety that consumed her. Today is the day, she thought, even though the idea of facing her mother's secrets left her paralyzed. Anna's revelation about her mother's romance had shaken her deeply. The weight of the expectation she felt on her shoulders had become almost unbearable. People were talking, and the pressure to uncover the truth felt crushing. There was a voice inside her whispering not to let herself be defeated, but doubt and fear were louder. "What if the truth is worse than I imagine?" she questioned, recalling every emotional wound she had ever carried. Elisa closed her eyes and allowed herself to feel the anguish that flooded her. It was as if the pain was building up inside her, ready to explode. She thought of her mother and the image she had always had of her, a strong woman who never let anything shake her. But now, with the diary in hand, that image was shattered. The pages revealed a woman who had made risky choices, who had loved intensely and somehow had failed. What did this mean for Elisa? If her mother was not perfect, what did that say about her? With each new passage she read, Elisa felt her confidence slipping through her fingers. The words seemed to echo her own insecurities, and the idea that she could be seen as a failure, as someone who couldn't cope with her mother's legacy, left her in tatters. She found herself submerged in memories of her childhood, moments that seemed simple but were now tinged with a new light.
"I am not like her," she thought. But the truth was that she felt more and more like the woman she was learning to know. That night, under the soft light of the moon, Elisa decided she needed a change. The diary had become a symbol of her struggle, but also of her courage. She could not continue hiding. The weight of the past was real, but the possibility of a different future was even more tangible. With this in mind, she made a decision. No matter what she discovered, she would face the truth.
The idea of failing was terrifying, but the thought of hiding forever was even more unbearable. Elisa called Anna. "We need to meet. I'm ready to face this," she said, her voice firm despite the tremor in her hands. Anna sounded surprised, but soon her voice was filled with encouragement. "That's great. I'll be there in a few minutes." Elisa's heart raced. She knew this would be a pivotal moment, the first step toward her liberation. When Anna arrived, Elisa led her to the room. The diary was open on the table, and the two sat in silence for a moment, absorbing the gravity of what was about to happen. Anna took Elisa's hand and squeezed it. "We're in this together," she said, and Elisa felt a comforting warmth. They began to read together, and as the words came to life, Elisa felt a storm of emotions. There was love, betrayal, and pain, but there was also hope and courage. With each revelation, Elisa found herself closer to understanding who her mother really was, and consequently, who she could become. But not everything was easy. When they reached a passage that spoke about her mother's choice to leave behind a love, Elisa felt the anger rise. She shouted, tears streaming down her face. She could have fought for it. Why did she give up? Anna watched her, concern in her eyes, but also a deep understanding. "Sometimes people do what they think is best, even if it doesn't make sense to us," she replied. The conversation turned into an emotional debate, where each of them exposed their wounds and hopes. It was a test of friendship, where Anna's words served as a reminder of the love that existed between them, even when confusion and pain seemed dominant. At the height of the discussion, Elisa had an epiphany. Maybe true courage isn't just about facing the past, but also about accepting that we are made of failures and successes. "My mother made mistakes, just like I did. That doesn't make me less, but more human." This realization freed her from a weight she hadn't even known she was carrying. Anna smiled, and in that smile, Elisa found a new strength. "And now, what are you going to do?" Anna asked, her voice soft but full of expectation. Elisa looked at the journal and, for the first time, felt that she didn't need to be defined by her mother's choices. She could write her own story, one that mixed her family's mistakes and successes with her own experiences. "I'm going to write my truth," Elisa decided, determination growing within her. "I will face my past, but I will also embrace my future." And with that, Elisa's journey transformed from a painful search into an opportunity for growth and self-discovery. The path wouldn't be easy, but now she knew she wasn't alone. With Anna by her side, she was ready to confront each page of the journal and, more importantly, every aspect of herself. Elisa felt a mix of relief and confusion as she faced the open journal before her. The words that once paralyzed her now seemed like an invitation to freedom. However, the courage that had awakened within her was not enough to erase the fear that followed her like a shadow. The revelations about her mother left her in a constant state of introspection. How could she cope with the idea that the woman she admired had her own flaws and fears? How would this affect her? In the days that followed, Elisa found herself lost in thought. Every time she looked at the journal, a new wave of doubts hit her. She knew she had taken an important step, but the road ahead seemed filled with thorns. Summoning the courage to face the past was one thing, but now she had to deal with the consequences of that. What to do with the emotions that arose and the pressure she felt to understand everything at once? Anna, on the other hand, was by her side, supporting her every step of the way. But even her friend began to show signs of concern. One afternoon, while they were walking in the park, Anna decided to bring it up. "Elisa, you seem distant."
Is everything okay? Anna's voice was gentle, but there was a noticeable concern in her eyes. Elisa sighed, searching for the words. I am trying to process everything. Sometimes I feel like I'm facing not just my mother's past, but mine as well, and that's scary. She hesitated, recalling the revelations about her mother's life, the mistakes she had made, and the decisions that led her to that situation.
What if I fail like she did? What if I repeat the same mistakes? Anna stopped, looking into Elisa's eyes. No one is perfect, Elisa. Your mother made choices that led her to a different place, but that doesn't mean you can't carve out your own journey. You are not her. Anna's words were a balm, but the insecurity still lingered. I know, but what happens if I mess up? What does that say about me? Elisa was battling her own insecurities, and the idea of failure weighed heavily on her heart. The fear of not meeting expectations was paralyzing. Anna placed her hand on Elisa's shoulder. What matters is what you learn from your mistakes. You may fall, but that doesn't define who you are. The true failure is not trying. The determination in Anna's words touched Elisa, but the internal struggle was still present. However, this conversation awakened something within Elisa. She realized that every time she reflected on her mother's life, she wasn't just looking for someone to blame. She was trying to understand how those mistakes shaped who she was and who she could become. The idea that her mother's journey was a lesson and not a condemnation began to resonate in her mind. Elisa decided to take a step forward. Instead of focusing solely on the fear of failure, she began to think about the small victories she could achieve. Every time she felt discouraged, she remembered Anna's words and sought a new angle. Instead of seeing herself as a potential repeater of her mother's mistakes, she began to view her story as an opportunity for learning. That night, while revisiting the journal, Elisa came across a passage that spoke about the importance of vulnerability. Her mother had written about how she felt when opening herself up to love and the fear of being hurt. This revelation made Elisa reflect on her own life and relationships. She recalled moments when she hesitated to open up, fearing judgment or rejection. It was time to change that. The following week, Elisa decided to open up to Anna about her own insecurities. During a dinner, as they shared laughter, Elisa turned to her friend. Anna, I realize that sometimes I'm afraid to show myself vulnerable, to be honest about my flaws. You've always supported me, but I feel like I still carry this armor. Anna looked at her attentively. You don't need to wear armor with me, Elisa. I'm here for you, no matter what happens. Vulnerability is hard, but it's also where we find the deepest connections. These words touched Elisa in a new way. She realized that the friendship they shared could be a source of strength, a safe space to open up. The fear of failure began to transform into a motivation to be more authentic, not just to understand her flaws, but also to accept them as part of her journey. In the days that followed, Elisa started to apply this new perspective to other areas of her life. She talked to her family about her desires and fears, something she had avoided for a long time. As she opened up, she felt a weight being lifted off her shoulders. Acceptance and understanding began to create space for growth. However, this change wasn't without challenges. Her mother, noticing Elisa's newfound confidence, began to worry. Are you changing? But what if that pulls you away from me? She asked one night, concern evident in her tone. Elisa realized that while she was freeing herself from some insecurities, her mother was still struggling with the ghosts of the past. I'm not pulling away, Mum. I'm just learning to be myself. I want you to be part of this, Elisa replied, trying to calm her mother's fears. It was a delicate moment where both faced the truth of their stories. This dialogue turned into an opportunity for reconnection. As they talked, Elisa noticed that her mother also had her own wounds and insecurities. The vulnerability that once seemed like a weakness now revealed itself as a bond that could unite them both. They began to share stories, laughter, and sometimes tears. It was a slow process, but a necessary one. Over time, Elisa realized that the lessons she was learning were not only helping her deal with her own past, but also strengthening her ties with those around her. Every small victory, every sincere conversation motivated her to keep facing her fears. The journey wouldn't be easy, but with each step, she felt lighter. And so, as the journal continued to reveal secrets of the past, Elisa discovered that true power lay not only in understanding her mother, but in accepting herself. Change was underway, and she was ready to face whatever came her way, with courage and vulnerability. Elisa looked at her mother's journal, its pages filled with feelings and stories that seemed so distant and yet so close. Each day, she allowed herself to read a little more, diving into the life of the woman she had always admired. As time passed, the words began to transform into an inner conversation, a reflection on her own insecurities and fears. One morning, as she walked through the living room, Elisa decided she needed to take a step further. It was time to face not only the ghosts of the past, but also the fears that held her back. She sat down at the kitchen table, the journal open in front of her. The first thing she did was write a list. It wasn't a to-do list, but a list of fears and insecurities. Fear of failure, fear of not being enough, fear of opening up to others. As she wrote, she felt a lightness, as if she were lifting a weight off her back. Anna, noticing the change in her friend, encouraged her to share her feelings. "Elisa, why don't you talk about what you're feeling?" Sometimes sharing worries makes them seem smaller. Anna always had a way of illuminating the darkest corners of Elisa's mind. With a nervous smile, Elisa decided it was time to open up. During a dinner at Anna's house, as they enjoyed a simple yet delicious meal, Elisa took a deep breath. "Anna, I've been struggling with some things, my mother's journal. It made me realize that I carry fears too. Fear of not being good enough, of not being able to handle things." The words flowed from her mouth like a river, and with each phrase, Elisa felt lighter. Anna listened attentively, her eyes full of understanding. "Elisa, we all have those fears. What matters is what we do with them. You're not alone in this." Anna's empathy touched Elisa's heart, and for the first time, she felt she could be vulnerable without fear of judgment. With Anna's support, Elisa began to apply this new perspective in her daily life. On a particular day, she decided she wouldn't avoid communication with her family. That weekend, during a family lunch, she sat at the table and decided to open her heart.
"Mom, Dad, I'd like to talk about something that's been bothering me." The room, once filled with laughter and lively conversation, fell silent at her words. "Of course, dear." "What's going on?" her mother said, with a concerned look, encouraging her to continue. Elisa felt her heart race but pressed on. She talked about her insecurities, about the weight she felt trying to be perfect, and how that distressed her.
With each word, the tension began to dissipate, and when she finished, the room was wrapped in a warm silence. Elisa's mother hugged her, tears in her eyes. "Dear, we all have our struggles. You don't have to carry this alone. You're perfect just the way you are." The acceptance and love emanating from that response helped Elisa realize that vulnerability could indeed create stronger bonds. As the weeks went by, Elisa began to see her flaws in a new light. Instead of only worrying about what could go wrong, she started to value the lessons each mistake taught her. If she had previously hesitated to take risks, now she allowed herself to fail because she understood that each fall was a learning opportunity. What can I learn from this? Became a constant question in her mind. Once, while participating in a presentation at school, Elisa felt her nerves spike in her chest. She had prepared, but still, anxiety threatened to take over. Remembering Anna's words, she decided to face her fear. Before going on stage, she closed her eyes and took a deep breath. If I mess up, that's okay. It doesn't define me. And with this new perspective, she performed. Even if some parts didn't go perfectly, the feeling of having put herself out there and done her best was liberating. With each small victory, Elisa felt stronger. Honest conversations with friends and family became a constant part of her life. She realized that the deepest connections were built on vulnerability and sharing. The friendships that once seemed superficial now flourished, and this encouraged her to be even more authentic. During a walk in the park with Anna, Elisa looked into her friend's eyes and said, "You know, I realize that what I once saw as weakness is actually a strength. I don't need to be perfect to be loved." Anna smiled, a sparkle of pride in her eyes. "Exactly, Elisa. The beauty of life is in the imperfections and the stories we carry." Elisa's life began to reflect this new wisdom. She allowed herself to be more open, more present, and, above all, kinder to herself. Looking at her mother's diary, she no longer saw just a record of mistakes and failures, but a testament to a woman who was also trying to understand her own journey. This new perception helped Elisa accept that life is a series of ups and downs, and every experience, good or bad, contributes to who we are. Over time, Elisa not only became stronger, but also more grateful. Grateful for the lessons learned, for the friendships that solidified, and for her new way of viewing the world. She discovered that true wealth was not in accomplishments but in human connections and personal growth. Thus, each day was a new opportunity to reinvent herself, to open up to the world, and to accept that even with flaws, she was exactly who she was meant to be. Elisa was at a crucial point in her journey. The past few weeks had been filled with self-discoveries, but now, faced with a new situation, she felt the weight of doubt creeping back into her chest. The school talent show was approaching, and the idea of performing alone terrified her. She had signed up to sing, something she had always dreamed of, but insecurity threatened to swallow her whole. That day, as she prepared for rehearsal, anxiety took over. The memories of her recent performance, where she had felt so free, began to dissipate, giving way to old fears. What if I mess up? What if no one likes it? What if I feel ridiculous? She questioned herself, feeling her hand sweat as she held the paper with the lyrics. Even with the certainty that she had prepared, the fear of failing seemed stronger. Anna, noticing Elisa's tension, decided to intervene. "Hey, are you okay? You seem distant." The worried look on her friend's face made Elisa hesitate. "I don't know, Anna. I'm so nervous. What happens if I can't do it? If I'm not good enough? I'm scared of disappointing everyone, myself included." Anna pulled her to a quieter corner of the hallway. "Elisa, remember when we talked about vulnerability? You opened up to your family, and that was amazing. Now here's another opportunity. What do you have to lose? You love to sing, and that's what matters." Anna's voice was firm but gentle, touching a part of Elisa that she was trying to ignore. What if she really allowed herself to be vulnerable? The idea intrigued her, but doubt still lingered. Before going on stage, Elisa's heart was beating so fast it felt like it would burst out of her chest. The auditorium was packed, and the voices of her classmates blended into a deafening buzz. When she heard her name called, a wave of panic engulfed her. Now or never, she thought as she walked toward the stage. When Elisa stepped onto the stage, the outside world seemed to disappear. She saw the audience but couldn't focus on the faces. The blinding light left her momentarily blind, and for a moment, all she could feel was fear. She remembered her mother's diary, the words written about facing challenges and the importance of being true. With a deep sigh, she decided she wouldn't let fear paralyze her. "If I mess up, that's okay," she whispered to herself. She took the microphone, feeling the crowd's vibration. The first notes of the song came out of her mouth, and surprisingly, the music wrapped around her like a warm hug. But soon, insecurity attacked her again. Nervousness grew, and as she looked at the audience, Elisa saw expressions of expectation. Fear consumed her, and in a moment of despair, she hesitated. The lyrics escaped her mind, and an awkward silence filled the space. Her heart sank, feeling the pressure to be perfect. In that instant, the past haunted her. She remembered all the times she felt inadequate, all the failures she had accumulated throughout her life. What would happen now? Would this be a definitive failure? The thought of giving up seduced her, but she recalled Anna's words, "You're not alone." And, like an echo, she heard her mother's support, always encouraging her to be who she truly was. With a new surge of courage, Elisa decided to open up. "Excuse me, everyone, I'm nervous, but I want to try again." The audience, noticing her vulnerability, began to applaud, and this unexpected support made her feel a bit more secure. With a shy smile, she took a deep breath, remembered the lyrics, and started again. The notes flowed, and this time, the music carried her. With each verse, the tension dissipated, and she allowed herself to feel the joy of singing. The performance was a mix of mistakes and successes, but the most important thing was that she was there, exposing herself, embracing her vulnerability. At the end of the presentation, the audience applauded her standing ovation. Elisa no longer cared about perfection. She had freed herself from the weight she carried, and more importantly, she had connected with others in a way she had never done before. After leaving the stage, Anna was waiting for her with a radiant smile. "You were amazing! Did you see how good it is to allow yourself to be yourself?" Elisa's heart was filled with gratitude. She had faced her fears, and although the presentation had not been perfect, the experience was transformative. The true victory was in having exposed herself, in having allowed herself to feel. In the days that followed, Elisa reflected on what she had learned. It was not just the applause that made her feel fulfilled, but the strength she had discovered within herself. She realized that life would always be full of ups and downs, but that each challenge faced would make her stronger. Looking at her mother's diary, she saw not just a collection of memories, but a guide that would help her on her own journey. Elisa was determined to keep growing, to face her fears, and to cherish every moment. The life lessons she had learned were now etched in her heart, and she knew that regardless of the challenges to come, she would have the courage to move forward. True wealth did not lie in achievements or perfection, but in human connections and in accepting who she truly was. And so, with a new spirit, Elisa was ready to embrace the future. After the performance, Elisa felt as if she had crossed a boundary, leaving behind the fear that had imprisoned her. The applause still echoed in her ears, but more than that, there was a lightness in her heart. She had exposed herself, and the feeling of freedom was unparalleled. It didn't matter if the performance hadn't been perfect. What really mattered was the courage she had found within herself. In the following days, Elisa began to notice changes not only within herself, but also in the people around her. Anna, always her friend and confidant, seemed to shine more brightly. Conversations that once revolved around insecurities were now filled with dreams and plans. "Elisa, you inspired me to sign up for the dance competition," Anna said with a smile. Elisa was delighted. The courage to expose oneself had spread, and the environment around them was transforming into a space of support and motivation. Elisa reflected on what she had learned. She realized that true overcoming was not just in conquering fears, but in accepting that failing was part of the process. Failures were not the end, but steps that led to a new beginning. Talking to Anna, she said, "You know, I used to think I had to be perfect. Now I understand that the beauty lies in the journey and in the experiences we live." Anna nodded, recognizing her friend's new perspective. It was as if a new light had been ignited within Elisa, and that light illuminated the path for both of them. Classes at school became a space for growth. Elisa began to get more involved in activities, participating in debates, and even volunteering to help with the school theatre. The fear of exposing herself was replaced by a genuine desire to connect with others. During theatre group meetings, she often shared her ideas. "I think we all have something important to bring to the table," she would say, encouraging her peers to express themselves. Furthermore, Elisa's relationship with her family also strengthened. Upon returning home after the performance, she found her mother waiting for her, hugging her tightly. "I am so proud of you, my daughter. You allowed yourself to be true, and that is a tremendous victory." Her mother's words resonated with Elisa, and she realized how much vulnerability had brought more sincerity to her relationships. Conversations that were once superficial deepened, and Elisa felt more connected to her family. The impact of the experience of performing did not stop there. At school, a new friendship began to blossom. A classmate, Luana, who had always been shy, approached Elisa after the performance.
"I saw you on stage. You were so brave. I could never do that." Elisa smiled and replied, "You can too. Just take it one step at a time." The connection between the two strengthened, and they began to support each other in their artistic projects. It was as if Elisa's vulnerability had created a pathway for Luana to feel safe enough to open up as well.
Over time, Elisa began to realize that true success was not just in being the best singer or winning awards, but in allowing herself to be who she really was. The pressure she felt to meet external expectations dissipated, giving way to a more authentic pursuit of joy and satisfaction in the little things in life. Each day was a new opportunity to learn and grow. One night, while writing in her diary, Elisa reflected on what it meant to be vulnerable. "I learned that vulnerability is a strength, not a weakness," she wrote. "When I allow myself to be myself, I create deeper and more meaningful bonds. Fear may visit me, but it doesn't need to be my host." This new wisdom began to shape her actions, and Elisa felt more confident with each passing day. The connection with others, the acceptance of imperfections, and the courage to expose herself transformed Elisa's life into something much richer and more fulfilling. She learned to embrace the ups and downs of life, to celebrate small achievements, and to value every friendship she cultivated. The talent festival had been a milestone, but the lessons she drew from that experience continued to guide her on her journey. Thus, Elisa moved forward, ready to face new challenges, but now with a new mindset. She knew that each step, even the most hesitant ones, was part of a bigger journey. And on quiet nights, when she looked at the stars, she finally understood. True wealth was in being true to herself and sharing that authenticity with the world. Elisa looked out the window of her room, watching the leaves of the trees dance in the wind. Time had passed since that night when she performed at the talent show, but the changes she experienced still reverberated in her life. Over the months, she allowed herself to explore new opportunities, always accompanied by the awareness that vulnerability was a powerful strength. With the support of Anna and Luana, Elisa became involved in various artistic projects at school. They formed a small theatre group where each brought their ideas and emotions to the plays they created. What started as an attempt at artistic expression transformed into something much more meaningful, a safe space where they could be themselves, without fear of judgment. Elisa felt that with each rehearsal, more and more people joined them, drawn by the energy of acceptance and freedom that had formed. This made her think about how a small act of courage could inspire so many others to open up and express themselves. Besides the activities at school, Elisa began to engage in community projects. She remembered how she had always felt insecure about her voice, but now she was willing to use it to make a difference. She participated in art workshops for children in vulnerable situations, and discovering the joy of teaching and sharing knowledge brought a new meaning to her life. Elisa realized that true success was not in being recognized or winning awards, but in touching the lives of those around her. Each smile and laugh from the children were like little trophies that she cherished in her heart. Reflecting on her journey, Elisa understood that the failures she feared were not barriers, but steps that helped her grow. Each time she felt insecure, she remembered the performance and the strength she found within herself. This new perspective encouraged her to try new things, even when fear seemed to paralyze her. She realized that sometimes the hardest path was the one that brought the most valuable rewards. Life was not a straight line, but its series of curves and detours that, when accepted, led her to unexpected and wonderful places. Her friendship with Anna and Luana also deepened. They became mutual support in all aspects of their lives. The conversations that were once filled with insecurities transformed into dialogues about dreams and aspirations. Elisa saw how this friendship helped her become a stronger and more confident person, and she realized that true connection with others was based on authenticity and mutual acceptance. At home, her relationship with her family also deepened. Conversations with her mother became more frequent and meaningful. They shared not only joys but also challenges and vulnerabilities. Elisa's mother began to encourage her to pursue her dreams, and the young woman felt increasingly supported. Home transformed into a refuge of love and understanding where everyone could truly be themselves. This new dynamic brought Elisa a sense of peace she had never experienced before. As she wrote in her journal that calm night, Elisa reflected on the wisdom she had gained. She realized that life was made up of moments, and that each one, even the most difficult, contributed to her growth. With a smile on her face, she wrote, "I learned that life is a mosaic of experiences. Each piece, each failure, and each achievement fit together to form the image of who I am. And now, I celebrate each one of them." Elisa felt a wave of gratitude as she looked back at the girl she used to be. That fear that imprisoned her now seemed distant, like a shadow that dissipated at the first ray of sunshine. The journey of overcoming did not have an end, but a continuous learning process, and this excited her for what was to come next. With each passing day, she felt more connected to the world and the people around her. With a heart full of hope, Elisa knew that life would continue to present her with challenges and opportunities. But now, armed with the courage to expose herself and the wisdom to embrace her imperfections, she was ready. And as she ventured into the unknown, she felt at peace with herself, aware that true wealth was in living authentically and sharing that authenticity with the world. Elisa looked out the window, feeling the gentle breeze caress her face. The sun was beginning to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. That scene made her reflect on how much her life had changed in the past few months. Since the night she had the courage to perform at the talent show, she not only discovered her voice, but also the strength that had always been within her, hidden beneath layers of insecurity. With a smile on her face, Elisa remembered the rehearsals with Anna and Luana. Each shared laugh, each improvisation on stage made her understand the true meaning of friendship. They became not only theatre partners, but confidants, supporting each other in moments of doubt and celebrating every small victory together. The conversations that once revolved around fears and insecurities were now filled with dreams and plans. "Remember when we thought we wouldn't be able to do that scene?" Anna said once, laughing. "Now we are here, creating amazing stories." Elisa felt that this mutual support was essential for her transformation. Through her involvement in community projects, Elisa also realized the power of her voice. While teaching art to children in vulnerable situations, she discovered that she was not only impacting their lives, but also healing herself with each interaction. The laughter and smiles she received in return were like balm for her soul. One day, one of the children commented, "You know, Elisa, you are a true artist," with eyes shining with admiration. This recognition made her realize that success was not defined by awards or applause on a stage, but by the ability to touch people's hearts. Her relationship with her family also blossomed. Conversations with her mother became deeper, filled with genuine exchange. "I am so proud of you, my daughter," her mother said one night, as they settled on the couch for yet another one of those meaningful dialogues. "You have allowed yourself to be who you really are, and that is a tremendous achievement." These words echoed in Elisa's mind, making her feel stronger and more secure each day. The vulnerability that once seemed like a burden was now a source of power and connection. Looking back, Elisa realized that the failures she feared were, in fact, learning opportunities. Each mistake taught her valuable lessons, and each challenge she faced shaped her into the person she had become. "If I hadn't performed at that festival, I might never have discovered who I am," she thought, filled with gratitude. She understood that life was a mosaic of experiences where each piece, even the smallest ones, contributed to the final picture. In a moment of introspection, Elisa decided to write in her journal again. "I have learned that vulnerability is a strength, that friendship is a gift, and that each failure is a step towards growth. True wealth is not in being perfect, but in being authentic." She smiled as she closed the journal, feeling at peace with herself. Elisa's journey was far from over. She knew that new challenges would arise, but now she was equipped with the courage to face the unknown. The lessons she had learned transformed her into a stronger, more confident, and more open woman. And above all, she was willing to continue exposing herself, connecting, and sharing her authenticity with the world. With her heart full of hope, Elisa looked to the future. "If I could give advice to someone like me, I would say, don't be afraid to be who you are. Life is a journey of discoveries, and even when it seems difficult, every step is worth it," she murmured to herself. And now she invited everyone to reflect on their own journeys. What have you learned from your challenges? How have your experiences shaped who you are today? Elisa felt that every story mattered, and that by sharing, they could create a network of support and empathy. She wanted others to know that they were not alone in their struggles, and that vulnerability, when shared, could transform into strength. With this thought, Elisa made a heartfelt appeal. If this story touched your heart, like and share. Let's create a space where we can celebrate our achievements and learn from our failures together. Your voice matters, and by joining this conversation, you help bring more stories like this into the world. Don't wait. Start now. And so, with a new sparkle in her eyes, Elisa was ready to continue her journey, just like all of us, in search of self-discovery and connection.